Hey there everybody, Tommy Williams here with Behind the Knife Studios. Today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite horror franchises, or series if you will. Now this is my personal top 10 list. This doesn't reflect, an official top 10 list, but either way, feel free to comment or to agreeing or disagreeing with whatever you see. But anyway, here is what are my top 10 favorite horror series. Alright, number 10 is Alien. And the reason I have Alien so far at the bottom of the list is they weren't really horror. The first one was definitely felt like a horror film. It felt a lot like a slasher film. You have the crew of the Nostromo from the first one, and they're just slowly being picked off one by somebody you don't see until it's too late. Felt a lot like a slasher film. And even 2 had a lot of horror elements to it. The reason it's so far at the bottom of the list is, well, the 3rd and 4th sequels I felt were just pitiful compared to the work by Ridley Scott and James Cameron, and they didn't feel like horror films as much as action films towards the later installments. Number 9, Halloween series. Now Halloween, it's one of the first, slasher films to get popular. And, I love John Carpenter's work. I think he's a great writer and a great director. However, I really like the fact that he, tried to bring a lot of depth and substance to the characters and the killer himself. In fact, what I found interesting about Michael Myers is, unlike most slasher villains, he didn't just kill for the sake of killing. He killed because he had a goal, and that was to kill his last remaining family member, Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. I thought that was really cool that he was a man on a mission. However, I loved the first movie. The second movie I thought was even better. Had a lot more action scenes. And the way Michael Myers and Sam Loomis go out is just epic. However, I felt the later Halloweens, it's just my personal take, of course, but I just felt they wore very thin after a while. Number 8, Wrong Turn. Now, I first discovered this movie summer of 2010. It really surprised me. I thought it was going to be one of those really cheesy sci-fi movies with boring and annoying characters, lame villains, and really, really horrible special effects. But I was surprised. I watched the first one. I loved it. I couldn't wait to see the other sequels. And now that the 4th movie just came out, I recently picked that up. I just really loved I thought the characters were very interesting, given the budget of the film and the fact that, the last 3 were straight to DVD releases. And the effects, they weren't great, but, they weren't the worst things ever either. So, those are also some great movies that Number 7, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's one of the most controversial films ever created, and in fact, until recently, it was banned in many countries, and the trailer was considered so scary that people actually ran out of the theaters while they were showing it. Now, in the original series, I thought the 1st and the 3rd were the strongest, and I know a lot of people disagree with me here, but I really liked the remake series. And in fact, it was, while there were other slasher films at the time, like Psycho, and then, Halloween came 4 years later, but I feel like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first slasher film to really do the whole silent mass killer that uses weapons and tools to kill their victims. And in fact, one other thing I should mention is the fact that the sequels in the original series to Texas Chainsaw Massacre all have an actor who was either already big or would go on to be big. In the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, you had Dennis Hopper. The third film, you had Viggo Mortensen, who, for those of you who might not know, that is Aragorn from Lord of the Rings. And then in the fourth Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, New Generation, it had Renee Zellweger. Alright, number 6, Nightmare on Elm Street. Now you're probably wondering why this is so low on the list, because I'm sure most people would have this as one of their, at least their top 5 or top 3. I really liked the first film. I thought it was very frightening. In fact, this was the first one to have a killer with, supernatural abilities or superhuman abilities. Freddy would kill his victims in a sleep, as opposed to, just stalking them in the woods or something and killing them there. What I thought was very cool about that was the fact that, Freddy has complete control of the dream world, so you really do not stand a chance. And it was, in the first film, it was figuring out how to get him out of the dream so that he could actually be killed. I thought that was really cool and made for some great conflict with the characters. Even though a lot of people consider it a what-if story, in fact, I'm one of them, I thought that the second movie was actually decent for what it was. And then the third movie, I think, was the last one to really, stick to kind of the horror genre. The rest got kind of silly after that. With the exception of Wes Craven's New Nightmare, definitely recommend that one. But anyway, I just felt that, out of the original series with Robert Englund, I felt that, Freddy was a likable character. Fun to watch, but, not necessarily scary. And, even some of the kills, I just found myself laughing, especially like the Power Glove kill from movie 6, where Freddy's driving the car and he says he beat his high score. Thought that was really funny, just to name an example. But yeah, that concludes number 6. Number 5, the Night of the Living Dead series by George Romero. Zombies, they're everywhere in pop culture. There's references to them everywhere, and there have been several video games and even some anime based off of zombies, or that have zombies in them. But George Romero really, he's, I guess you could say, he's the father of the zombie genre. What I love so much about his movies is that it's putting man against man, or man against undead man. I like this because, if it comes to movies, if I had to pick between a bad story or bad characters, I would definitely take the bad story, because characters can make a good story. And I just think, when you trap all these people together in one spot and they have to work together to survive, I think that can add a lot of story, other than just surviving a bunch of zombies. And, of course, there was the great